Darth Vader's iconic suit is capable of striking utter terror into the hearts of any rebel that would seek to face him. As the very face of the Jedi executioner, Darth Vader spent his life hunting down and butchering the remaining members of the Jedi Order with a ferocity unmatched by most enemies of the Order. Throughout his tenure, however, despite having the support of the Emperor and the vast resources of the Galactic Empire at his disposal, Darth Vader has never been seen sporting any other suit than the one that he is most well known for, despite the infamous pain and agony that it caused him throughout his long life. Even though he had the ability to upgrade his suit, he never received any substantial augmentation, even after the Empire grew to become the single greatest power faction in the galaxy. And although previously on the channel we have discussed Darth Vader's new and improved suit, we want to re-explore this topic and discuss possibly some of the functionality of Darth Vader's new upgraded suit that would ultimately never be worn by the Dark Lord, as well as explain exactly why in revised detail why he would never wear this suit. So why is it? Why is it that Darth Vader's suit never got an upgrade? How much do we know about the alternative suit that was offered to him, and why didn't he take it? Well, stick with us today, weary acolytes of the Star Wars universe, and let's explore all of these details. First, let's cover what we know about the upgrades that were offered to Lord Vader by the Emperor, and the limitations that his previous suit that had held Vader back. Vader's suit, despite looking menacing, was highly uncomfortable and very painful for him to wear, let alone be permanently sealed within. As a proficient mechanical engineer himself, Vader was appalled at the craftsmanship of the original armor, citing that the technology was already out of date and was hastily thrown together. The binding between the synth skin, his remaining flesh, and the mechanical components of his suits itched incessantly, which was incredibly uncomfortable all of the time. The physical limitations meant that his movement was sorely restricted, and his mobility drastically suffered as a result. Throughout his life, he has only ever been seen lifting his arms above his head on a few very brief occasions, and only when absolutely necessary, as even a maneuver as simple as this was incredibly difficult for the fallen Skywalker. Needless to say, a lack of mobility for a physical combatant is an incredibly severe handicap that could have cost him his life on multiple occasions across multiple encounters. In addition to the immense physical discomfort that tormented him throughout his life, he also had to endure severe mental and psychological stress as a result of the sensors that had been calibrated into his very helmet. The sensors that dictated sound to him did not discriminate between the levels or volumes of noises, meaning that Vader was living in a perpetual state of sensory overload all of the time. Even the smallest sounds yelled at him, and he quite literally never had a moment of silence nor rest. And on the rare occasions he was able to sleep, he would be tormented by the waking nightmares of his past as Anakin. This left him to function on minimal sleep, and the combination of sleep deprivation and living in utter agony throughout much of his life caused him immeasurable psychological stress, not to mention permanent psychological damage. The resources of the Empire, however, could have helped him to alleviate many of these issues, augmenting his mobility, letting him live in a more comfortable condition, and mitigating the sensory overload that cursed him for many decades. The Empire could have fixed his sensors in order to grant him a few moments of grace, as well as assist his physical range of motion, which would have assisted in his already incredibly formidable proficiency with a lightsaber. On the surface, they could have made Vader far more dangerous. This would, theoretically, have made Vader into a much more flexible and mobile soldier, able to become even more deadly and augment his physical capabilities to more closely resemble what he was once capable of as Anakin before his defeat on Mustafar and his encapsulation into the life support armor. So, despite all of the suit's hindrances and all of the abilities of the Empire and the vast resources of the Empire that could have allowed Vader to upgrade his armor, why didn't he? Why didn't he accept any of the upgrades? For this, there are two distinct reasons. The first had to do with the difficulty that lay in transitioning Vader from one suit to another. Keep in mind this is the Legend's explanation. After his defeat at the hands of Obi-Wan, his innate rage and hatred toward his former master allowed the dark side of the Force to preserve his life far longer than should have ever been natural. From here, the Emperor had to repurpose the very same augmentation machines that had previously been used on General Grievous, hence the outdated material and crude craftsmanship. Palpatine had never planned on using a suit like this for Vader, and had to adapt to the situation after Vader's defeat, moving quickly to ensure that he did not would die. This meant that without the Empire reaching the fullest extent of its power as of yet, he had to improvise and essentially throw together Vader's combat suit using what he already had, which preserved his life, but did little else. If he ever sought to take Vader back out of the suit, however, he ran the risk of seeing Vader die without the life support systems that were currently in place for him, as they had to be deactivated in order to move Vader to a new suit. The fact that Vader had even been able to survive at all was a miracle, and it was unknown if Vader could even survive being separated from his suit, if even for a moment, let alone transferred into another one, and so the risk was ultimately not worth it, as Palpatine would lose the single greatest asset that the Empire had. Presumably though, Palpatine did in fact construct a second suit of armor, and it was ready to go, leaving the option up to Lord Vader whether or not he wanted to transfer himself into this new suit. There was actually another reason why Vader ultimately refused the upgrades from his end that went beyond the undue risk of him dying in the process. Darth Vader is one of the most physically imposing characters in all of Star Wars, and is one of the deadliest Jedi hunters in history, despite the many hindrances of his suit. But this is not due to his mobility. Many Jedi Masters are far more agile than that of Vader, and able to evade most opponents of his stature as well as size. They have the advantage of speed, mobility, and even the advantage of numbers in many cases. Vader has killed upwards of 8 Jedi Masters in a single encounter, despite being crippled, barely able to move, and in a constant state of discomfort. So what makes him the most formidable enemy that the Jedi had ever seen? Well, my friends, the answer lies in the very same pain and discomfort that he himself hated so deeply. The dark side of the Force draws on pain, anger, and fear, and with Vader in a constant state of utterly enraging and infuriating discomfort, he was able to augment his power within the Force and compensate for his lack of mobility with the sheer brute strength that the Force allowed him to exact over his opponents. His pain made him stronger. With the power of the Force on his side, which was fed by his innate discomfort, he was able to march through virtually any opposition that sought to face him, and helped him grow into the reputation that he would come to build over the greater part of 2 centuries. Not to mention the fact that Palpatine wanted Vader in his original suit, because of the simple fact that he had purposely and intentionally made it very susceptible to Force lightning, meaning that if he ever wanted to, he could bring Vader to his knees at a moment's notice. While Vader was theoretically able to upgrade his suit as the Empire grew, the original iteration served him in a number of ways despite its many pitfalls, and the process of transferring Vader would have been far more complicated than it might have seemed on the surface. The answer in Star Wars canon, though, is apparently the suit of Lord Vader is far more proficient than it was in Star Wars Legends, and the suit itself, although not receiving an entire redesign and overhaul, did experience several changes over the course of Vader's career and small alterations, most notably to the size of the helmet, with a lot of the inner workings and cybertronics of Vader's suit remaining the same. However, small little details and changes were made to Vader's suit. Not to mention that in canon, Vader is actually able to exit his suit and bathe in Bacta, meaning unlike Star Wars Legends, this is no longer a reason why Vader never substantially upgraded his suit. With this though, the agreed upon hypothesis is that Palpatine does in fact still want to keep Vader weak, and this is the reason why he never gave him a more mobile suit in Star Wars canon. The same explanation for Star Wars Legends. Only in Legends, we do know for a fact that a second suit was eventually constructed, even if Vader did not choose to make the transfer. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? And what are your thoughts on both the canon and Legends explanation for Vader's second suit? And ultimately, why he did not choose to make the transfer? What do you think that this suit looked like? And do you think that Vader would have been more or less powerful if he had received these upgrades? As always, my friends, we would love to hear what you have to say about this in the comments down below. May the Force be with you, and I will hopefully see you in the next video.